Alright, so check this out. Little freaked out. Okay. The weirdest thing just happened to me. I had to pull over to post this on here because I'm so confused. I was just in Dollar General shopping for some items and placed my purse in front of the compartment where I usually place it. I shopped around for like 15 minutes, picking up the random items that I was shopping for. Some of them included different makeup items, like specific lip gloss shades, eyeshadow colors. You get it. Body soaps and specific bath bomb scents that I had picked out, and some snacks and candies along with some grocery items. There's about 15 to 20 items in total. So I go to the self-checkout and scan everything in my cart and bag it, and then I go to grab my purse, and it's not there. I freak out for a minute, thinking maybe I took it out and left it in one of the aisles, or second-guessing myself, I thought maybe I never even brought it in the first place. So, I tell one of the associates at the checkout counter that I may have left my bag in one of the aisles, and I ask him if I can leave my bag of scanned items at the self-checkout stand for a second to go see if my purse was indeed left in one of the aisles. I literally walk a few feet away and I see another cart sitting right around the corner with my purse in it in the front compartment, and the cart is full of the same items that I had just scanned and placed into my bag. All of the same items down to the same shades of lip glosses, eyeshadows, the exact same soaps and candies and groceries. I started freaking out, and I pulled this cart over to the other one at the self-checkout just to compare the items because I was in a state of disbelief, and it's all the same items that I had just scanned. I just don't get it. How were the two carts full of my exact items that I had picked out? And how had I ended up with the other cart without my purse in it when I got to the self-checkout, when I never stepped away from my cart while I was shopping? I mean, if I had accidentally grabbed someone else's cart in the aisles and brought that one up instead of my own, that would make sense, but this cart I ended up with had all of the same items that my other one had, down to the lip gloss colors and everything. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. Some of the comments under this story include supposed suggestions as to what may have happened, suggestions of getting security footage, and so on. But one of the comments really got my attention. It says, "You know, the only other mundane explanation I can think of is that someone was stalking you, picking up the exact same items for their own amusement, and then you just happened to accidentally grab their cart without noticing, and then they ran off." The original OP says, "I thought about that too, which freaks me out even more than the glitch in the Matrix story." Two friends and I watched a man on a bicycle turn transparent and then vanish. Last summer, two of my friends and I, we're both in our 30s and female, were carpooling to the airport in the early hours of the morning to catch our flight. It was around 3 or 4 a.m. I was in the passenger seat, my friend was driving, and we had just picked up the third friend. We all live in the suburbs near Detroit. My friend, who was picked up last, lives only 5 to 10 minutes away from DTW. We were driving down a well-lit 2-lane road. The area is well populated, and you often do see pedestrians out and about at any given hour. Anyway, as we were driving, we stopped at a red light at an intersection. Directly ahead, we see a man, looked to be in his 30s or maybe 40s, riding a modern-day red bicycle near the edge of the road, heading in our direction. He was wearing a beanie hat, a flannel, and shorts. I don't recall which shoes he had, but I do remember that he also had a backpack on. He had longer hair that poked out from the bottom of his hat, and some facial hair from what I can recall. My friend who was driving said, "He better hurry, it's starting to sprinkle," which prompted me to look up from my phone and look at the man again as he was getting closer. All three of us were now looking at this guy, and he was getting closer by the second. He was almost to the crosswalk directly in front of us, right under a streetlight, when he started to turn transparent and then flicker like an old film movie on a projector. You know how sepia photos or filters look? Like warmer, muted, vintage-looking brown tones? Well, I watched him and his bright red bike turn from vibrant colors to sepia in a millisecond, and then instantly vanish into thin air. I instantly shot my head to the left to lock eyes with my friend. Both of us were now in shock. Our eyes were wide and our mouths were open in utter disbelief. Our friend in the back seat was the first to process what had just happened and said, "Hey guys, where did he go? Did you guys see that? He turned see-through. I mean, seriously, where did he go? What the lucky charms?" We all kind of let out some shrieks and freaked out a little bit, all talking a mile a minute as we each quickly confirmed that we had all seen the same sequence of events occur right before our eyes, under direct light no less. I had goosebumps and my eyes were welling up with tears because it gave me an urge to cry. I was just so tripped out about what I had just seen. We all retold the story one by one, over and over again, all the way to the airport, and also continued to recount the experience until we got to our destination. We're all still friends to this day, and we still talk about this event often. I think about that day anytime I pass that intersection, and I intently watch any pedestrian that I happen to see there. Honestly, it's an experience that I will never forget, and it's what ultimately led me down this Matrix rabbit hole. A simulation glitch is the only explanation for what occurred that day, and it perplexes me even still. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. In last week's episode, I read a story called "I'm Really Starting to Believe That I Was a World War II Pilot in a Past Life" by WWII Pilot 1997. Just to catch you up in case you missed it, this person was convinced that he was a pilot in his past life and specifically piloted the Avenger aircraft. Well, there was an aviation expo in his town just this past weekend, and he was going to do his damnedest to try to make it into one of the Avengers just to see what happened. I caught up with him, and this is what I learned. Well, it happened. I can't even describe the feeling as I walked up to the aircraft, as it was the first one that I had ever seen in person. It felt like an electric shock was running through my whole body, and I almost felt like I was floating as I walked towards it. And I'm not gonna lie, I teared up. I told my story to one of the Avenger crew members, and he let me sit inside. I can't even describe the feeling that I had. It all felt so familiar. The switches fell to hand. Hell, I even knew how to start the dang thing. Reaching back towards the canopy, well, you can guess how that felt. I, for one, am thrilled that Cherokee Pilot 1997 got to experience this. Let's do some more. My friend and I witnessed her backyard gazebo levitate, go over a 6-foot fence, and land in her neighbor's backyard perfectly on a normal summer day. This must have happened when I was 16 or 17 years old. I just asked my old friend about it the other day to confirm whether I was crazy or not, and if I'm remembering things incorrectly. But she confirmed everything. One day, I was at my friend's house. It's a typical detached home in southern Ontario. Each backyard had fences as the homes were surrounded by one another. My friend had a huge, fully set up gazebo in her backyard. It was set up properly and had been there for quite some time, with no issues. We were in the basement one spring or summer afternoon. The weather was sunny, warm, normal, and we heard a loud bang come from upstairs. Naturally, we ran up and asked her mom what that noise was, to which she replied that she wasn't sure. Eventually, we all ended up looking out the upstairs window in her mom's bedroom, which allowed us to see both her and her next-door neighbor's backyard, just to the left. We were in shock. Her humongous, full-sized gazebo had somehow levitated and landed perfectly straight and normal in her neighbor's backyard. It makes no sense. I googled that residential fences in my area are between 6 and 8 feet tall, and it wasn't a small item like an umbrella that could just be picked up by the wind and then fall somewhere. Like, even if it somehow fully levitated, it shouldn't have landed in perfect condition. I mean, Google a backyard gazebo and you'll see what I mean. No one remembers it even being remotely windy that day. This was freaking weird. My friend and I are still shook about it to this day and don't understand it one bit. Could have been in the news for sure. This person includes an edit that says, here's a few facts about what happened. 1. The gazebo was made out of a hard material like iron or metal. The neighbors had to come into her backyard and disassemble everything, bring it back to their backyard and set it up. It took hours, and they had no explanation for it either, and they remember it the exact same way that me, my friend, and her mom all do. Also, her mom specifically remembers the neighbor's candle that was lit in the gazebo, still being lit and standing straight up in her backyard after it landed. It wasn't particularly windy that day at all. Not that it would matter. Wind doesn't cause a metal/iron framed gazebo to levitate 6 feet in the air and then land perfectly in your neighbor's backyard. This was beyond weird. Have you ever felt like there was someone missing? This is going to sound really weird, but I've been experiencing weird flashbacks and dreams lately. It's usually of recent events within my friend group, and everything happens as I remember it, but for some reason, there's always an extra boy there. Like a boy who would interact with my friends and had their own dynamics going on, yet I'm certain I've never actually met him. Even looking at photos in those memories where I can find the exact real-life photo, the spot where he would be in my memories during the picture being taken, is now just an empty spot. I don't know how to explain it. I can remember him being there, but there's no evidence that he's ever existed. For example, one of my friends had a wedding recently, and during the dance portion, I remember our whole group took turns being the one person dancing in the center of our circle of friends, and I know he wasn't there, yet I remember him dancing too. And in the wedding video that we played back, the portion of the song I remember him dancing to, nobody was in the middle for that portion on the tape. It feels like there was someone that's supposed to be here too, yet for some reason, he's just gone. When I first directly saw him in a dream, I felt overwhelmed, like he was someone that I really miss, but at the same time, I'm completely sure I've never met this guy. I even talked about it with some of my friends, and a lot of them just looked at me like I was crazy. But I felt compelled to post about it when some of my friends actually said that they can vaguely remember him too. One of my friends was even able to recall his exact dance moves that he did at the wedding. But again, that video shows nobody danced like that during his part of the song. Another instance is 2 months ago at our friend's birthday party. The boy accidentally spilled his drink on one of my friends, and she flipped out because it stained her outfit. And my friends all remember that a drink got spilled on her and her being pissed off about it. But she claims that never happened. And in all the pictures we took at the end of the night, her outfit had no stains. I don't know. I have no idea what this all means, and it feels very schizo, but other people remember this boy being there during all these crazy hangouts too. So it can't just be me being crazy, can it? Doctor changed color. So, I'm not into paranormal stuff, nor am I superstitious in any way, so you can imagine my confusion over what happened. My son brought home the plague from school, and after 3 weeks of vomiting, I went to the doctor. I'm in Australia, so it's not as expensive over here. And because it was an emergency appointment, I didn't have the possibility to pick my doctor, so the doctor I was seeing for the day was Dr. Dan. I walk in, and yes, I'm sick, but I also drove to this appointment and had been at work earlier in the day, so I'm not on death's door or anything. And there sits a young, white, Australian man who did an absolutely excellent job, and off I went home with a bunch of antibiotics. When I get home, my husband has also succumbed to this plague, and I highly recommend Dr. Dan. I tell my husband all about Dr. Dan, and the next day he makes an appointment and he goes in. Imagine my surprise when my husband comes back home with a bunch of antibiotics and a story to tell. He then proceeds to tell me that while Dr. Dan is indeed fantastic, he's not white or young, and he's not Australian. In fact, I think he's Indian. Guys, I'm telling you that I would have testified in court under oath that Dr. Dan was a young, white, Australian guy. I even looked on their websites at the doctors that are available, and there was Dr. Dan, an Indian man, middle-aged dude, the darker complexion. I've never hallucinated in my life, and although I was sick, I wasn't that sick, so I have no explanation. That's the one and only thing of its kind to ever happen to me. All I know is Dr. Dan was awesome and had me back up and running within 3 days. This person includes an edit that says, I also asked reception if there was a student doctor or a fill-in doctor at the time, and they said no. It was only ever Dr. Dan. Something else I remember that'll prove it was the same doctor that my husband and I saw was that when my husband went in, he said to the doctor, "My wife was in yesterday and she was given antibiotics. I'm feeling sick and thought I may need them too." To which Dr. Dan said to my husband, "Ah, yes, I remember your wife. She was quite sick." So that proves it was the same guy. At least, to me it does. Where did this light switch come from? I've lived in my home for 10 years, and I decorate our foyer wall every season. So like 40 times at a minimum that I've worked with this wall. It's a prominent but small wall. It's only 6 feet wide, and it faces the front door. I'm a perfectionist, and I stress over things being centered, straight, and balanced. So I go to change out the wall hanging, and I'm centering it, but now there's a second light switch on the wall. One on the left, and now one on the right. It's not the same distance from the edge as the one on the left, so it throws off things looking centered. If I'd had this problem every season/holiday for 10 years, I think I'd remember. I have a ton of pics of the wall from all of my decorating, and sure as shoot, it's all in the pics, and now everything looks off-center. It gets even weirder though. The switch turns on the upstairs hall light. Just last week, the upstairs hallway light stopped working, and I haven't gotten around to changing the bulb. But it apparently wasn't the bulb, because when I flipped the new switch, the hallway light came on. There's only one light in our house that has 2 switches that control it and have to be on for it to work. Never in 10 years has the upstairs hallway light not worked, and had not been the bulb. I never had to explain to the kids about 2 switches for the hall light like the one downstairs. So, not only do I have a new light switch, but someone also randomly flipped it for the first time in 10 years the same week that I discovered it. It's just me and my adult son in the house, and I haven't had company in forever. My son doesn't remember the switch either. But it's right in the foyer, right when you walk in. The whole thing gives me this weird feeling. Like maybe I have some faint, weird memory of it being there, but I 100% know I've never used that switch and never had a time that changing the bulb upstairs didn't make it work again. Not once have I ever said, "The hallway light isn't working. Must be the downstairs switch." Never. How was the first time I notice it also the same week that it's flipped and affects the light upstairs? So, Captain Crunch, weird. You know, I don't think I've ever done a UFO story. Let's do one now. UFO I saw in Northern Ontario. When I was a teenager, I would take these month-long canoe trips every summer. They lasted about a month and would usually consist of whitewater canoeing, although some of the trips were on flat water. All of these trips took place in Northern Ontario and Quebec, around the town of Temagami, for context. The trips were part of a summer camp that focused on self-reflection and testing yourself. It was the same group of guys year after year for 9 years. The final trip I did was when I was 19 and took us over 300 miles down the Aerwxyna River, which splits between Quebec and Ontario. It's very remote. We would pass an off-grid hunting cabin every few days where we would use the water tank to replenish our water bags. There were no roads and only the occasional snowmobile trail for hundreds and hundreds of miles. The goal of the trip was to take this great river to the mouth of the James Bay, which is connected to the Hudson Bay. We would then paddle across the open bay, about 60 miles of open water, to a sandbar where we would spend the night, before continuing to the remote indigenous town of Moosonee, Ontario. Before we got to the open bay, we were camping on marshland. Due to the tides, we had a unique sleep schedule. We would fall asleep in our tents by 10 p.m. to wake up at 3 a.m. to catch the tide. It was about 11 p.m. and I was sitting crouched on my heels on the riverbank, watching the moon and listening to the waterfowl. As I was sitting there, a shiny cylindric object about the size of a paper towel roll with rounded ends shot past me about 20 feet to my left, the opposite direction of where the tents were. It plunged down into the river in a diagonal fashion, so it only splashed a little bit, before shooting back out a few hundred feet downstream. It instantly accelerated to the speed of sound and vanished, creating a sonic boom. People started coming out of their tents, curious about the noise. I told them it was probably a hunter in the area. For reference, this happened in 2012, and a few years ago, I told my friends this over some drinks, and they understandably thought I was joking. But I know what I saw, and it was the only time I've ever heard the sound barrier broken. My boyfriend's photos came back to me. 3 weeks ago, I went to a wedding with my boyfriend and his friends. There was one of those photo booths there, and we all took some photos. There were 8 strips of photos, 2 copies of 4. I ended up taking all the copies home, as he asked me to do, and we agreed that I'd give them to him when I saw him again. The following week, I went over to his house, and since I'm one of those people that packs the night before, I put the photos in my bag so I wouldn't forget them. One of the copies had actually gotten oil on them from some food, so I made sure to give him the nice copies and pack them quickly so nothing else would get on them. I was kind of talking out loud, so my flatmate, who, by the way, did not attend the wedding but does know him and did see the photos, she knew what I was doing. This will come into play in just a little bit. The next day, I see my boyfriend. I took the photos out of my bag before I did anything else. I put them on his bed, and then I sat down after that. And he smiled at me in this really specific way, which is why I remember it really vividly. He was happy to get them, and we went on with our day. 2 days ago, I was actually thinking about those photos because I realized I wasn't sure where I had put my copies. Then, they were just right next to me. I counted my photos and realized I had an extra 5, not 4, and I was confused because I had thought that I had given him all 4, but maybe I had forgotten to give him this one. Well, today, now 3 weeks later, he tells me that I never gave him the photos. Like, he literally just told me right before making this post. He said it so casually. He just asked me when he could expect to get them. And well, here I am, absolutely confused because I remember giving him the photos. I remember the memory exactly as I described it here. Sure enough, though, I look over and all 8 copies are right next to me. I kind of just froze and asked my flatmate about the day that I gave the photos. And she tells me that, yes, I did give them to him. She remembers me packing them, and that when I came home, I'd even told her that he'd been happy when he got them because of that big smile that I remember. But here they are, in front of me. All 8 copies, and I apparently never gave them to him. Now I'm just really confused. My flatmate and I are the only ones who remember the fact that I gave them. And before anyone asks, no, it's not a prank of any kind. My flatmate and boyfriend are not those types of people, and they don't talk much except for when he comes to visit me. He's not gaslighting me about the fact that I didn't give them, because all the photos are still literally on my bed as I type this. He genuinely doesn't remember that happening, because I guess it never did. I'm positive I had a past life on the Titanic. My name is Bella. I'm 16 years old, and my story began when I was 7. The Titanic didn't feel like a new discovery, but an old, forgotten memory being found again. I became deadly obsessed with it, constantly watched movies, documentaries, read tons of books, and drew pictures of the Titanic every day, but it never felt like enough. I get very emotional and homesick when I engage in anything Titanic related. I always felt a deep connection to the Titanic and the passengers on it, and I felt as if maybe I knew them personally, and it felt like my original true home. Every time I see a fact about the Titanic, I unintentionally think, oh, I remember that. The ocean was always an emotionally heavy place for me, not just because I love nature, but because I knew it was where the Titanic was, especially since the ocean I live closest to is the Atlantic. I refuse to swim in it. Something just, doesn't feel right. I always felt like my obsession wasn't just out of pure interest, but something much bigger. Once I learned about past lives, I thought, maybe I had a past life from the Titanic. But I never tried doing anything about it since I felt like most people wouldn't believe me. In April of 2023, I wanted to get to the bottom of why I felt this way all these years and to get my clarity. So I did some digging and found a past life regression meditation. I saw myself as a young woman with long brown hair wearing a white gown and walking inside of a ship that looked exactly like Titanic's grand staircase and heard terrible groaning sounds coming from the hull. I got scared and jolted awake, and I immediately realized what happened. I knew right away that it was Titanic. I remembered the narrator saying a name would appear in my mind, and the name was Elsie. Shaking, I rushed to look it up, doubting I'd find anything, but a woman describing the exact one I was in my regression showed up, and her name was Elsie Bowerman. I don't know if you know who she is, but she was a survivor of the sinking. I looked at her and I felt an immediate connection and started literally just bawling my eyes out. It felt like all of my questions were answered and a huge weight was lifted from my body. It was such a relief. I finally knew why I felt the way I did, for all these years. To this day, the Titanic means so much to me, and I think about it every single day. You don't have to believe me. I just wanted to share my story. NPC texture updated mid-train ride. I couldn't wrap my head around what I saw, so I'm hoping I can just talk it out here with you. I take the train to work every morning. Lately, now that summer is rapidly approaching here in Colorado, the sun is fully up and over the neighboring buildings by the time I get to the station, so it's not like I'm making my commute in the dim, mid-morning light of dawn. Today, I get on like normal and can see the train is mostly empty except for one other guy. Sitting right by the door in plain sight is an obviously Indian/Middle Eastern gentleman. Black hair, clean-shaven, tan skin, glasses, with a dark green sweater. He was young, probably mid-20s. I made eye contact with him as I got on and walked past his seat and took mine, which was facing toward the front of the car, with my back to him. We only had gone one stop, so there was no opportunity for anyone to get on or off the train since I sat down. The train pulls into the station and the doors open. From behind me, someone passed by my seat. I look up and for a moment their back was facing me, but I saw the same dark green sweater of the man that I made contact with just one stop ago. They turn around and I'm shaken to see a 60-something-year-old white man with stark white hair and a short, scraggly, neon white beard wearing the same dark green sweater. I stare at him in disbelief for a moment before we make eye contact again, but I quickly looked away because now my adrenaline is firing on full blast and I can't understand who or what I'm seeing now. I look behind me as the man exits and sure enough, the seat where I saw the first man was empty. I'm not blind. I have very good eyes, as a matter of fact, and I have no psychological disorders beyond ADHD, which, last I checked, doesn't make you hallucinate people's age or skin color or facial hair. Though, now I'm not sure, and I might need to talk with my psych about this. Could someone with a similar sweater have gotten on the train behind me, walked past me just to exit the car while the original man left the car behind me? Well, yes, but why would they get on the train just to get off through a different exit? I'm sure there's a good explanation for this, but I just can't think of one. CD appeared in my car. This happened a few years ago, and I still haven't been able to figure it out. I drove my car with my two children, who were 4 and 5 at the time, to my grandmother's house for Nana school. This was during the panini, so schools were closed. All of my aunts and their grandchildren would meet up at my grandma's for school. It was honestly pretty adorable. Anyway, I was the first one there, and left before anyone else had showed up. Who was all there at the time was my grandma, grandpa, myself, and my 2 children. I get my kids unloaded and into the house. My grandpa's cooking breakfast. My grandma and I chat about whatever, and I say goodbye to my kids, and I head back out to my car. On the center console is a brand new CD that hadn't been there before, nor had I ever seen or even heard of the artist. I went back in to ask my grandma if it was hers and to tell her that somehow it ended up in my car. but she says no, and I just go on to call my husband and ask him if maybe he'd placed it in there, and maybe I just didn't notice. He says he's never seen it before and has never even heard of the artist. My disc player in my car doesn't work, and I haven't tried all that hard to find a CD player to listen to it. It's still in my car, and it's been driving around with me for quite some time now. Maybe a guardian angel of some sort, I don't know. I think about it every so often, with the thought, I really should give that a listen. But also, maybe I shouldn't. Our friend's glasses vanished at a sleepover. This happened 5.5 years ago, around the winter of 2018. My friends and I were at our friend's house for a sleepover, as we usually did on the weekends. The four of us, which was me, Alex, Nate, and Kyle, pulled up to our friend's, Michael's house at 8 p.m. The five of us were the usual crew, as our main friend group, throughout all of high school, and we would always hang out at Michael's house, even nowadays. Back then, his house was like our second home, pretty much. It was like we lived there on the weekends. Michael's house has 3 floors, a top floor with all the bedrooms, a middle floor primarily consisting of the living room and the kitchen, and then there was the basement, which is where we usually hung out when we were at his house. Tonight, however, we started off in the basement and then decided to migrate to Michael's room upstairs. So there we were, just having a good time in Michael's room, and at a certain point in the night, Alex and I decided to start wrestling each other. It wasn't all that serious. I mean, the wrestling itself was, but there was no ill intent behind it. We would always just wrestle because, why not? While Alex and I were wrestling, I thought it would be funny to take Alex's glasses off, which is exactly what I did. Mid-wrestle, I snatched Alex's glasses off of his face and threw them underneath Michael's bed. That way, they were in a safe spot where no one would accidentally step on them and break them. In the meantime, Nate, Kyle, and Michael were standing on the other side of the room, away from the bed, and keep that in mind, watching us, laughing and egging us on, just, guy stuff. Alex was kinda mad that I took his glasses from him, so the wrestling match pretty much immediately stopped as he grabbed me by the shirt and then said in an angrily manner, "Where are my glasses?" I responded with, "Relax, man, chill out, they're under the bed." Alex then lets go of me and lays down on the floor to peek underneath the bed. "Bro, where are they? I don't see them." "Alright, hey, maybe it's because you're more blind than Helen Keller without your glasses. Let me look, I'll show you," is what I told him. I then proceed to check underneath the bed, and nothing. No glasses, at all. And keep in mind, our 3 other friends were still on the opposite side of the bedroom, away from the bed. At this point, just having their own conversation, living in their own world, away from what Alex and I were dealing with. Despite that, though, I was still a little bit suspicious, and asked them anyways if they had seen or took Alex's glasses. The 3 of them just kinda gave me a look of confusion and said, "No, we didn't touch them." They then decided to help Alex and I look for the glasses. "Are you kidding me, bro? Where are they? Why did you even have to touch them?" Alex was starting to get pretty mad. I tried to plead my innocence. I said, "I swear, bro, I placed them underneath the bed, I promise. What the hell happened to them?" Deep down, though, I felt pretty guilty, but also extremely confused. I knew it wasn't my fault, as I swear on everything that I love, I placed them underneath the bed. The 5 of us searched. Forget underneath the bed, we looked at the entire bedroom, from the desk drawers, the closet, and even the clothes drawers. 20 to 30 minutes had to have passed by the time we just concluded the glasses were not in that bedroom anymore. I'm not exaggerating when I say that these glasses actually despawned from Michael's bedroom. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking one of these idiots probably took the glasses from underneath the bed and hid them. But trust me, I thought the exact same thing in the moment, as it seemed like the only plausible explanation. Now, that would make sense if it wasn't for the fact that Nate, Kyle, and Michael weren't anywhere near us or the glasses the entire time that Alex and I were wrestling. We even made every one of us swear on our own mothers that we didn't take the glasses from under the bed. That might seem like a pretty stupid method of collecting evidence, but in our friend group, swearing on your own mom was something that we all took very seriously. And it was our way of saying, alright, cut the bullshit and stop messing with me. Tell me the dead honest truth. And it was a method that had a 100% success rate of seeing if one of us was telling the truth or not. On top of that, we checked one by one and patted every one of us down to see if any of us took the glasses, even Alex himself. After all of that investigative work, we found nothing. No glasses, not even a clue as to where the glasses could have gone. These glasses were not in the room at all, not hidden in a drawer, not on any of us, and most confusingly, not underneath that bed. All of us were so visibly confused that the glasses just vanished. Poor Alex was way more frustrated than confused, though. We decided to take the search to the basement, which, doesn't really make sense, but after all, we were originally hanging out down there, and at this point, we were running out of ideas. Keep in mind, none of us have left Michael's room once since we entered it originally. Not to go to the bathroom or to grab a snack, nothing. We all exited Michael's room and started heading downstairs together. Once we made our way to the basement, we headed towards the couch area and we were all in complete shock. Because there they were. Alex's glasses. They were folded up, sitting in a tiny little bin of TV remotes situated on the TV stand. How on God's green earth did the glasses end up down here? We pretty much all said out loud. Alex honestly didn't care how they ended up down there. He was just relieved to have his glasses back. And I'm not kidding when I say he can't see a thing without his glasses. For the rest of us, though, we were honestly baffled, confused, and a little creeped out. Given the entire story that I just laid out for you all, it just made absolutely no sense how the glasses ended up down there. After the glasses were found, I literally brought each person in one by one into a separate room downstairs, even Alex, and interrogated them just to try to get some answers, as I was still a little bit suspicious. Nothing. After that, we kinda just went on with our night, played some video games, but in the back of all of our minds was the biggest mind bender we'd all ever experienced. And just to be clear, the glasses that we found in the basement were 100% Alex's glasses, and not just a random pair from around the house, as Alex himself inspected the glasses and confirmed that it was the exact company, color, and even screw type found in his glasses. And of course the prescription matched up too. These were, without a doubt, Alex's glasses, which just seemingly teleported from the top floor of the house to the basement. Nowadays, 5.5 years later, it's kind of nothing but a memory anymore, but every so often, that strange night does get brought up in our friend group. And to this day, nobody's come forth. No answers were found, no explanations can be theorized, and we're all still a bit, let's just say perplexed by what happened all that time ago. Were we all just going crazy? Who knows? But 5.5 years later, we still have no explanation for what happened that night. But what do you guys think? Heard backpack fall before it fell. I was getting ready for work in the mirror, putting my eyeliner on, and my backpack was on my boyfriend's computer chair just to the left of me, sitting there. All was quiet. Then suddenly, I heard a crash. A crash which sounded like a backpack falling to the floor, because that's what it sounded like, but it didn't come from the left. But I looked over at my backpack anyway, and it was still sitting there. I paused and racked my brains a bit. I asked myself, well, what fell then? It sounded close, and the weird thing was that even though it sounded like my backpack falling, the sound didn't seem to come from any specific location. When I heard it, it was almost like the sound was in my head and all around me. I continued to do my eyes, and a few minutes passed as I was trying to make my wingtips, and then I hear the exact same crash again, except this time it's from my left, and I see my backpack hit the floor. No one else was in the apartment with me, by the way, and the place is teensy tiny. There's no open windows, so no wind. Nothing upstairs was out of place, and I did go check. But my only question is, what happened? Schrodinger's bathroom light. I have an extremely weak bladder, which necessitates several trips to the bathroom at night in the pitch black. Owing to poor, uncorrected vision as a very young child, I've never really relied on my vision, but relied more heavily on my other senses. So it's nothing to me to have to go up a few stairs to the bathroom, brush my teeth, and use the conveniences without having to turn any light on. Which is exactly what happened last night. Except, in a break to my usual routine, as I left the bathroom without thinking, I reached out and grabbed for the light switch and switched it off. I stood there for a moment, scratching my head, trying to run through the sequence of events. I'm almost 100% certain that I didn't switch the light on, as I remember feeling around for my toothbrush and my toothpaste. But I do remember switching the light off and having the sense of being plunged into darkness. When I got back to my room, I checked with my partner to see if she was aware of the light going on and then off, but she hadn't noticed anything. I'm a real creature of habit with a good memory, so this has really thrown me for a loop. The trains switched directions. I've been waiting to post this for about a year, and I'll try to keep it short and sweet. I work for a moving company in Virginia, so me and 2 other guys were in a box truck headed to a customer's house. The driver takes a route that involves crossing train tracks, and we get stuck at the crossing. Our truck, being the first in line, is paused at the tracks. My coworker and I joke about it, giving him a hard time because it's a freight train and often that takes 15 minutes or so to pass. Within a few minutes, a train starts passing from the other direction as well. These are 2 sets of tracks that run parallel. So, the second set a little beyond has a freight train that's running east to west, and the tracks that are closest to us has a train going west to east. These tracks are near my house, and I've walked them both directions many times. We were watching, looking at the graffiti, and I happened to look down just for a second when I hear my coworker exclaim, What the Lucky Charms? I look up and I notice immediately that the trains have switched directions. Now, the one closest to us is going east to west, and vice versa. We all confirmed with each other that it happened, and proceeded to watch both trains go along for about 10 minutes until they finally passed. Like I said, I know these tracks well, and there's no way that they could have crossed. I mean, the tracks run parallel for miles, and each train was extremely long. This is one of the most startling experiences I've ever had concerning glitches in the Matrix. The only comparable experiences have been objects reappearing or doubling, and I do tend to believe that something odd is happening, but they're still so hard to prove. The trains switching has no explanation, and 2 other people saw it with me. If anyone else has a similar experience, I would love to hear it. Dishes that put themselves away. This peculiar incident took place well over a decade ago, in a house that had been my home for the majority of my life. The house, steeped in memories, was a cozy abode shared with my mom. At the time of this inexplicable occurrence, I was in the kitchen tidying up after a meal. Our kitchen, which is a pretty compact space, housed the dishwasher, oven, and cupboards in a narrow, corridor-shaped area. This layout, with just enough room to open these appliances, will play a crucial role in the unfolding of this story. I just finished running the dishes through the dishwasher. I was putting them away. I got to the point of putting the Tupperware away, which is usually the last thing I did as I emptied the dishwasher. I picked up a few of the half dozen or so items that were left, turned to put them away, put them in the cupboard, and then turned around to grab some more, and I noticed that the dishwasher was now empty. What in the store brand Cocoa Pebbles was going on? I wondered out loud as I stared at the empty dishwasher momentarily before turning around and looking at the Tupperware cupboard again, only to see that the rest of what was left was neatly, already, put away in their space. I felt a chill run through my body as I wondered how the hell that was possible. I know that there were a few items to put away, yet there was no way that I could have grabbed all of them at once. It wasn't possible that someone else could have done it, because, as I stated before, I was home alone at the time, and even if I wasn't, there was no way that anyone could have gotten by me without me noticing because of the way the kitchen was set up. I don't know what happened. It was just bizarre. It disturbed me so much that I left the kitchen in its state and laid on my bed to collect myself while I rested. It was all just too weird. I don't know, dude. I'd love it if my dishes put themselves away, right? This next story is from an anonymous user that sent me an Instagram DM. It says, "Hi, so sorry to send this here, but I don't have YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, but I do have a short glitch story that I want to share. I live in Africa, and back in the 70s, my dad, who was a big motorbike fan and loved to just head out and see where the road took him, crashed his bike on a lonely path in the middle of nowhere. He always said he didn't know how he got the bike up on its stand, as he'd shattered his leg. Well, he'd spent the night in the bush, surrounded by petrol-spilled drunken zebras, and by the grace of God, no lions. The next day, some people who had seen this crazy dude head into the blue the previous day came by and rescued him. The glitch is that last year, I was going through my dad's things after he'd passed, and I found a photo of him being airlifted out, which I'd never seen before. That's so cool, I thought, and why haven't I ever seen this picture before? So, I placed it in a small stack of other photos that I'd found in the same drawer and turned away briefly to prepare a new home for them, and when I turned back and picked them up, the photo was gone. From the middle of the stack of the others, like maybe 7 photos in total. I had never seen that photo before, and I haven't seen it since.